I am Turk Strongman at the Ron Q Ramateur Rocket. Thank you for selecting this video on conscience. Before I get started, and this is going to be a good one, I don't think I'm going to divide it into a set of short videos. The subject matter here, I believe, is such that however long it takes to get it said here, it's of the nature, it's of the sort that if you don't have the time or the patience to sit through it all, then probably you shouldn't be hearing it in the first place. So, and that partially is my excuse for my laziness or lack of interest in making it into, like a short set. Okay, but before going on, if you haven't done so already and you're just wasting your life away because of it, it's probably in your best interest to subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell feature. And then, of course, as always, share the joy of this channel with others. Those are humble requests, and having made them, let's get on with it. Conscience. Right now, I'm going to tell a true story to get into this. But just as a heads up, the point is about psychopaths, how they operate, their mindset. Because, psychopaths run the world. It's important to understand them. If you're one, then you'll relate to this right away. Especially if you're one who is, an adult, and you're a psychopath. Psychopaths don't suffer from conscience pangs. They don't have a conscience, as, it's missing. It's the missing thing. Antisocial personality disorder involves sociopaths, right? And you could say that psychopaths, if there's a distinction between sociopathy and psychopathy, it's that psychopathy is a genetic thing, you're born that way, and sociopathy turns out to work the same way. The results are the same, but it's a learned thing. It's an imposed thing. It's acquired. Okay, but otherwise they're the same thing. And if there is a difference, then that's it. All right. They don't have empathy for others. They don't have guilt. They don't relate to others' feelings. They don't feel much at all themselves, first place. And they lack conscience. Okay. Now, from their point of view, sociopaths and psychopaths are very good at observing people and imitating empathetic behavior, imitating having feelings, imitating how others act. That's how they can. So they're very good at it, and therefore they can very quickly seem like an old friend and read your needs that you didn't even know you had, and then seem to be the perfect person to fulfill those needs. And that's a manipulation with them. It's a way to gain your trust. It's a way to get rapport going with you. It's a way to get into you deeply. Then things change for the worst for you. All right. And they do this without any conscience. That helps them be really good at it. And see, what they know is that If you're not a psychopath or a sociopath, you're a regular, normal human being, you know, you have conscience. And you can't do what they do. Because you have conscience. Psychopaths and sociopaths who have put any thought into this and observed other people and seen the big difference between other people and themselves. It'll be this conscience thing. And they will see conscience as a big, huge drawback. Like a bum leg. Like dragging around a lead ball or a block of concrete tied to your leg. It would hold them back. They wouldn't want such a thing. They see it as a weakness in others. And they take advantage of that. They know that you have this weakness, and they don't. And both of those facts working together enable them to do what they do to people. All right, but now here's a story. I'm going to give you an example of a sociopath and to what extent they will go, because when I'm done, I'm going to say, now imagine that person is a real person in my own past. Now imagine that person in an elite position in the world, a person of power, money, and authority in the world, somebody at the top of the social pyramid, in the upper class, ruling class, let's say, in the banking dynasty class. All right, now here, I'm getting into stuff that I have never talked about publicly. I've told a few people who I've come to know very well, but I have never gone to this extent publicly. When I was in my early 20s and I lived in New York City, I was a cocaine dealer. I was many other things too. It wasn't the sole thing I did. I had a lot of different occupations. One thing I did for about 2 or 3 years was I was a cocaine dealer, and I want to tell you, I wasn't just the normal one, not just the run-of-the-mill cocaine dealer. I actually, I had a kind of like, ever since I was in my mid-teens, I had sold marijuana. I started selling it little bits, like nickel bags, in 9th grade at school. But that was in Pennsylvania where I grew up. Then when I was 19, I moved to New York City, and about the second or third year there, I had developed, I was a weed dealer there too. And I was doing okay with that, but I had to maintain a job. I drove a cab, I was a bicycle messenger, I was a chimney sweep, I built penthouse gardens up on, the tops of skyscrapers for the people who lived in the penthouses. I did a lot of things. I was a vegetarian food server and cook. I did a lot of stuff, all right? Okay. And I wanted to, as far as drug dealing goes, I thought it would be really cool to kind of like get to know some people at the top of the ladder. Get connected, I even had it in mind that maybe I would just sell anything black market. I wanted connected like that. And it turns out that one day, and I didn't even like cocaine. I was selling weed. One day I got a knock on my apartment door. I opened it, and there's this rather large-sized guy there. Hispanic looking. And he said that his cousin, who lived the next floor up, and who was the super of the building, the superintendent, cleans the hallways and stuff. Puts out the trash, the building trash and so forth. Sweeps out front of the building. The super. He'll fix something in your apartment if he can. The super. But that was his cousin, and his cousin, who I knew, and his cousin knew I sold weed, told him to come down there and knock on my door because he, the guy who knocked on my door, wanted to buy a little weed. Well, this is against my rules. This was not the way I conducted business. No way. I didn't know this guy. And what's this guy upstairs doing? The super. Telling somebody else about what I do. And then telling them to come knock on my door. I didn't like the way this was going. Not at all. And I let the guy at my door know that. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And if I sold weed, I'd be pretty pissed off about the way this just went. You need, no. The answer is no. I don't know what you're talking. No. This doesn't work. And the guy, very calmly, tried to persuade me. And I said, all right, listen. I might be able to help you out a little bit. But you need to empty all your pockets. And you need to lift up your shirt and you need to drop your pants. I need to see what you got and what you don't have. And he complied. I said, all right, come in. And then I seated him in the first room, which was not used. First room inside the door. And I said, you wait there. This is as far as you go. Well, the guy bought $10 worth of weed. And he left. A couple weeks later, knock on the door. Same guy. He said, I want to talk to you. I went kind of like through the same procedure. And he came in and he said, I didn't need weed. A couple weeks ago, I didn't need that. I wanted to see how you handle business. Because I wanted to test you out. Because my cousin has been screwing up in this line of business with me. And I wanted to find somebody else. And I asked him about whether he knows anybody else. And he pointed to you. Now and he said, you sell weed, so I wanted to see how you conduct business. And I got to tell you, never ran into a common run-of-the-mill weed dealer who handled things like you. I was impressed. I was really impressed. That's the kind of thing I was hoping for when I knocked on your door. And here's the deal. I can supply you with little quantities of cocaine, an ounce or two at a time. And I'll show you how to work with it, make money at this. You can make a lot of money. And I'll front it to you, and you just play by your rules the way you do, and you be honest with me, and you be straight with the money, and it'll be just between you and I, and you'll make a lot of money. And it turns out that this, and I accept it, hesitantly, but I accept it. It turns out, I'll see, this is in the very early 1980s. This is in the days of the big Colombian cartels, cocaine cartels. Remember that word, the cartels? Now they're called drug lords, or they're called whatever they're called. But back then, it was like there were like five main cartels. This is in the days of Pablo Escobar, and this woman. They made a movie called The Cocaine Godmother about her. I can't remember. Esmeralda? Something like that. Anyway, and Pablo Escobar. See, Pablo Escobar was known because he was a biggie in the cocaine thing. He had supply. And this woman, Giselda, I believe maybe Giselda, she was a ruthless person. And she pretty much like brought into the postmodern era the smuggling thing from South America to North America. She revolutionized it, and she was able to get Pablo Escobar's supply to meet the demands in North America. I was further along than that now. I was deeper than that all of a sudden. This guy who had knocked on my door, turns out that he was a runner and mostly a dog, and that is a cleaner, a collector. He kept things running right. When people got out of line, he would do his thing. But he also, he was a bit of a runner too, from South America to North America. He worked for one of those 5 cartels. Growers and manufacturers of the product in Colombia. Landowners. Where the shit is made, where it's grown, and the factories where it's manufactured, the finished product in Colombia. He worked for one of those. A young woman owned the operation, got it from her grandfather, who was still alive and was the head chemist involved. She ran the operation. Her husband was chief of security and making sure things got done right wherever their product went. The guy I know who knocked on my door worked for them. And he always had a little supply, with him. Sometimes it was a big supply. Maybe just, his idea was, I'll just give you some. Now listen, I got to know the guy pretty good. He was an okay guy. It got to the point where he would come to my apartment, lay down on my bed, take his .38 revolver, off his belt, lay it aside, and snooze for a while. He said to me, "You are one of the best people I know in this whole affair. And your space right here, you're the only person who I can do this with, and this is the only place that I ever go to, including my own apartment in New York, my own apartment in Miami, and when I go to Colombia, there is no place else except right here where I can lay down, take off my gun, my pistol, and feel perfectly safe and catch some shut-eye without any worries. This is it right here. All right. My best customer was a sociopath. I'm willing to bet that the people he worked for, this guy worked for too, the one I'm talking about, psychopaths too, sure. Ruthless people. But I'm not talking about them now. I'm talking about my best customer. His name is Jim. Big guy. Very tall. Wore size, 15, 16 shoes. He was a psychologist. Got his master's in psychology. His specialty, his master's thesis, he wrote on how to, what he called, crack social structures, social systems. In other words, how to cut through red tape and bureaucracy to get what you want from social structures and social institutions that have guards up, have gatekeepers, and so forth. You know, there are people who seem to be able to work the system. His master's thesis was done on this. In other words, how to manipulate, how to con, how to do all of that, and get your way, you know, work your way through layers of society, how to penetrate the deepest levels. Kind of like a sociopathic notion, right? Okay, that's what his specialty was. Now, he turned out to be the vice president of a very large drug rehab program in the neighborhood where I lived. A very large building, a lot of kids there. And he was the vice president. He was also chief counselor. He oversaw all the drug counseling that was going on. And he was in charge of a lot of administrative things, including petty cash. Well, Jim was a cocaine addict. Jim was also very personable. Jim was formidable when he wanted to be, and Jim was not afraid of anything. And he was a force to be reckoned with. But he was very personable and friendly, too, as you might imagine. He had a lot of charisma. He was very good to talk to. He was intelligent, very, well-educated. He was friendly. He had a good sense of humor. And I got to know him rather well. But my guy from Colombia warned me about him, warned me about Jim. He said, look, I know what kind of person he is. You might not see it, but I'm warning you, be careful about him. He's a dangerous person. I know his kind. Be careful. And I said, well, he's my major he's my major customer, And my guy said, yeah, I know. Be careful around him. He doesn't play straight. He doesn't play well with others. So, let me give you an example. In that neighborhood, the Lower East Side, at the time, also known as Alphabet City at that time, or Loizaida, now known as the East Village in New York City, very different now. Back then, volatile, creative, high energy, versatile, self-run, self-regulated neighborhood. A lot of artist types, a lot of junkie types, a lot of every type there. There were a lot of drug spots that sold cocaine and heroin. Lots of them. Largely in abandoned buildings. Pretty dangerous to go to those. I mean, you could get yourself injured pretty badly if you weren't from that neighborhood or you didn't know how to play by the rules. You didn't know how this shit worked. If you created a disturbance, it could turn out bad. There were workers in these places. Sometimes they became so busy, these places, in dark buildings, no lights, missing steps, all sorts of shit. You might have to go up 5 flights to get to where, there's a little hole in a door, in a locked door, and where the peephole would be, the peephole thing, which would be missing. No, it would still have the little flap thing, but, you could put money through there and then get what you paid for. There'd be lines down the street. Sometimes the workers, the people who would do this shit, would take police barricades, those blue things, the barricades, wooden barricades, and line them up down the sidewalk. And if you weren't on that block to make a purchase at the spot, you walk on one side of the barricades. And if you're going to get in line, you get on the other side. All regulated very well. I watched. They had lookouts on the corner apartments of the block. They had your shit down pat. All right. Jim was the only person I ever heard of who ended up figuring out where a couple of these spots, where their home base was, like where they hung out. The workers, the people who run these operations, right? Some of them ultimately, you trace back their product, trace it back to where it came from. It came from my guy, right? My Colombian guy. Well, Jim was the only one who really I knew of who went to this far. He went to one of the places where all the family, the brothers, the uncles, the cousins, of one of let's say one of the drug spots, like hung out, where they got their shit together to do business. Went in uninvited, just like broke down their door and went in, and there they all were. And he robbed them. What balls he had. And he got away with it for a couple of weeks. Then one day, he's walking down the sidewalk, same neighborhood, and a little Hispanic kid, caught up with him, walked beside him for a while, and the little kid said, "I know you." Jim, as he reported it, said, "You don't know shit. You're a fucking kid." And the kid said, "No, I know you. I was there. I was in there when you robbed the place a couple weeks ago. I was there. And maybe you didn't see me, but I was there. And we've been looking for you." And the kid pulled out a pistol, pointed it at the side of Jim's head, and pulled the trigger. Jim, however, noticed the size of the hole in the end of the barrel. Figured that looks about like a .22. Jim didn't duck, he didn't flinch. As the trigger got pulled, he put his hand up like this between his head and the end of the barrel. The bullet stuck in his hand. And he looked at the kid. Didn't show any pain, nothing. Just didn't get the fuck out of here. And the kid said, "No, I'm not." And at that time, a couple other guys showed up, and they herded Jim back to their clubhouse, where they got an old schoolhouse chair, with the wooden arm thing to put your books on. They spread that same hand out on that wooden thing and stuffed a knife through it down into the chair. And they said, "Now, you're going to sit right here. We need to talk." Jim said, "Fuck you." He ripped his hand up out of there, pulled the knife out. "Yeah, fuck you!" Pulled the knife out of his hand, threw it down on the floor, and walked out. That was Jim. That was his nature. That was his dangerous nature. All right. Where did he get the money for all the cocaine he bought from me? Petty cash at work. About $1,000 a day. Manipulated the whole affair. He would go up on his roof before he learned about me. And he'd pay me to freebase to shit with ether for him. Before that, he shot cocaine up on the roof of the building where he was vice president of a drug rehab program. No remorse, no guilt, no conscience, nothing. He did some worse shit to me eventually. That was Jim. Now! And he was a sociopath. He said so. And he was. My Colombian guy was right. Be careful of that guy. He can be your worst nightmare. And he turned out to be. Just about got me in some huge trouble with the Colombians. But in the end, I finally said, I'm finished now. And you know what they said to me? Nothing has stopped you. The law hasn't stopped you. You had a close shave. Getting ripped off by Big Jim, it turns out. Found out many years later, he did that. He ripped me off, took everything I had, and left me to be killed. And I almost got that way. And the very day, my guy postponed a hit on me for several months. Normally it would have come within a day or two. He put it off and put it off. Finally, though, there was nothing more he could do. And the woman, the young woman, beautiful Colombian woman, her brother showed up with my guy at my door. The brother had combat fatigues on and a chain hanging from around his neck, on both ends of which were steel balls, about the size of pool balls. And they were for breaking kneecaps. The two men walked in, and I happened to have the money that day, plus a few more $100. And my guy displayed his 38 and said, you have always been straightforward with us, and I have prolonged the inevitable as long as possible. Now, you owe this much money plus $300 for his flight here from Colombia. About you. You must pay now. It just so happens I had the money. Now you would think that these people would exterminate me anyway. But they didn't. They left as calmly as they had entered. And when I wanted to stop, I had also faced a legal scrape and then was just let go. Somehow, mysteriously, for whatever, I don't know what caused that exactly, but nothing came of it. New Jersey State Police. My guy said to me when I said, I'm done. He said, are you sure? Oh, I was also offered a position in Colombia at the mansion, at the factory, to be the family's personal freebaser because they knew of nobody, not even the grandfather, the chemist. They knew of nobody else in the world who could do it as good as I could. It was a complicated procedure. They didn't know of anybody else who could do that the way I did it. They offered me a job. I could go there, be their personal freebaser, and get anything I wanted for the rest of my life. Anything I wanted. Food, women, anything. Money, whatever I wanted. But I happened to also understand what wasn't said, and that would be that I would never be able to leave. I would die there. One way or the other. And I didn't want that, so I refused. There was no retaliation. When I wanted to stop, my guy said, geez, well, okay, nothing. Are you sure? Because the law can't stop you. Getting into debt with us doesn't stop you. You're like Superman. And you're always straightforward and honest. and you're a good person. That's amazing. And you want to stop? All right. Good for you. You know where to find us. And he left. And that was it. That was it. I got rid of his phone number, deleted it from my memory, never saw him again. I think probably all of those people are dead now, and have been for some while. Some drug wars took place, you know. Now, my point is, Big Jim, now that you know the whole story about this, Big Jim, imagine that guy being one of those people at the top of the social ladder in this world. Being not just in charge of a drug program and all the drug counselors in it, and in charge of petty cash. Oh, and by the way, he didn't own the building, but he sold it to somebody for a couple $1 million once. Imagine that. Then it was discovered what he did, and he had to give the money back, and he lost his job. No jail, nothing. That's like selling somebody the Brooklyn Bridge. How do you do that? I don't know how he did it, but he did it. All right. Listen, imagine him being a major bankster, being the central figure in a major dynasty, ruling class, a major player in the world, you know, the powers that be, the secret elite. Imagine that guy having that power and control and influence. Imagine that. Conscience? Just think of all the aspects of what I told you about Jim. He was enforcing rules against other people, and he broke himself. He gave himself rights that he wouldn't give other people, just like consider the drug program. He'd go up on top of the roof and shoot drugs into his arms, and come back down and reprimand people who even talked about wanting to do it, and so forth. Just imagine that guy being in a position of global power and influence behind the scenes, a string puller of government people, a string puller of society, of social institutions. Let's say a major player behind the media and, you know, the news and entertainment industries and so forth. Banks. Imagine that. Think about it. Because that's what the people who are in those positions are like. Conscience? That would just be a weakness, wouldn't it? That would just be a nagging, persistently nagging thing that would get in the way severely. And those who have conscience, from somebody like that's point of view, are weak, manipulable sheep. Not fit to own property. Cattle. Pawns. Man, they'll probably feel guilty if they don't do what they're told. Good God. Weak. Now, I want to ask you a question and then end this video. Are you a person of conscience or not? Does conscience, if you have it, make you weak? Or does it empower you to be human? Is it what keeps you in line? Or is it what prevents you from getting your own way and climbing the social ladder ruthlessly while people think you're wonderful? On which side are you? Do you have a conscience? Are you a human being or are you a monster? Are you a predator, a parasite, a power person, a pedophilic, parasitic, predatory power person? Or are you a human being? Conscience. Thank you for selecting this video on conscience. Did you like it? Well, then here's your reminder. Give it a thumb up. Let me know that you liked it. Make a constructive comment if you feel like it. And if you didn't do it yet, come on, man. Wasting your life away without having subscribed to this channel, so get to it right now. Activate the notification bell feature and share the joy of the channel with others. You heard it all right here on the IQ Ramacharaka. I am Turk Strongman. Now, you go be well.